Welcome to our presentation on the reading intervention, Sound Partners, presented by Chandra Clark, Rhonda Yosen, Sherry Lightfoot, Natalie McLeod, Hiba Musa, and Julie Siemens. Imagine you are in your first year of teaching. You are planning, preparing, and dreaming of the first grade students that will be in your classroom. You envision this group of bright, multiple minds, and everyone will be in tune with one another as you explore many great learning opportunities. But as the school year starts and the days go by, things are not quite what you expected. Each student comes with a different set of skills, experiences, weaknesses, and strengths. Their understanding of letters and sounds are all over the map, and you are not sure how you're going to teach each of your students to read, let alone help accelerate struggling students' understanding to close the gap with their peers. You scramble to look for a reading intervention. You talk to fellow teachers, search the web, read books, but don't know where to start as the market is saturated with programs. Our team hopes to help sort through the pile and present to you a reading intervention titled Sound Partners. In our presentation, you will gain an understanding of the neuroscience behind the program Sound Partners, as well as an overview, demonstration, and critical review of the program.
The pathway to efficient reading is shown in this image. The left hemisphere of the brain is the primary area associated with reading skills. All four cortical hemispheres are involved with different skills of reading: the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and the temporal lobe. When we read, we are developing the connections between these brain areas. The auditory cortex in the left superior temporal lobe is responsible for phonological processing and helps us recognize all 44 speech sounds when reading. The inferior frontal gyrus in the frontal lobe helps us form speech sounds, become fluent readers, and understand what we read. In the visual cortex, the part of the brain is used when we look at and recognize written letters and words. The left angular gyrus in the parietal lobe is the part of the brain that processes phoneme-grapheme correspondences, also known as sound symbol connections. This includes the dorsal stream of the angular gyrus, which is the phonological route in decoding letters to sound patterns to meaning. This is the part of the brain that sound partners, and the teaching of phonics begins to build the brain connections that we need to read.
Reading is a necessity. Literacy skills are recognized as one of the strongest predictors of academic success. Reading proficiently by the third grade is considered a make or break benchmark in a child's educational development, according to the Annie A. Casey Foundation. Reading deficits can result in negative outcome for learning that affects all curricular areas across grade levels. Students who are at risk for reading failure often exhibit a lack of phonemic awareness and phonics. Phonemic awareness is the sounds in spoken words, whereas phonics is the relationship between sounds and written symbols. Most phonemic awareness tasks are oral. Phonics instruction focuses on teaching sound-spelling relationship and is associated with print. Despite these differences, phonics instruction and phonemic awareness instruction are connected. In fact, phonemic awareness is necessary for phonics instruction to be effective. The notion that reading deficits become less responsive to remediation with an increasing grade level is well supported by research. One type of early intervention, which has raised considerable interest in the field of education, is one-on-one tutoring, a promising cost-effective one-on-one tutoring program providing phonics-based skill instruction is the program Sound Partners. Patricia Varisi, the developer of Sound Partners tutoring program, explains that the best way to teach kids reading is to teach them parts of the words. It is crucial for kids to understand sounds and be able to put them together. The Sound Partners program is a phonics-based tutoring program that provides direct instruction in early reading skills for struggling students starting from kindergarten to grade 3. It is delivered to the students during the school day in a quiet setting using books and cards with no need for technology. Sound Partners Kindergarten is a supplemental Tier 2 intervention, whereas Sound Partners Grade 1 to 3 services high-risk students in first grade, second and third graders who are below grade level in reading, and students just learning the English language. Using initial sounds, phoneme segmentation, nonsense words, and letter naming fluencies allow tutors to help students build fundamental reading skills. Students have daily opportunities to practice with a tutor in 30-minute one-on-one session or in a small group of 1 to 4 students. However, small groups are not recommended as each child progresses differently. The intervention is delivered 4 to 5 times a week for a minimum of 18 weeks. The goal is for students to improve reading skills, apply decoding techniques, and build fluency using the scaffolded decodable reader storybooks. In the kindergarten program, there are 70 lessons compared to 180 in the early elementary grades. Each lesson covers 7 to 9 activities of the following: alphabet practice, say the sound, first sound, word ending, segmenting and blending, word reading and spelling, sight words, sentence reading, and book reading.
Research by Jewell stated that a primary difference between good and poor readers is the ability to use letter-sound correspondence to identify words. Phonics is the understanding that written letters represent the sound of spoken language. This is our alphabetical code and not an easy code. Our alphabet consists of 26 letters, but 44 speech sounds that distinguish one word or meaning from another, called phonemes. The letters that make those sounds are called graphemes. In order to read an unknown word, a child needs to be able to look at the graphemes and connect each one to its phoneme. Sound Partners uses these sound cards to teach the sounds. They break the sounds into continuous sounds and stop sounds, as you can see. F is a continuous sound. Say the sound F. It goes on. Now try the sound D. Say D. The sound stops. Vowel pairs are also complicated. For example, when you think of the ow sound, you might think of the vowel pairing OW, as in clown, but it also can be spelled with a vowel pair OU, as in cloud. Same sound, different spelling. Even though there are 44 sounds, there are different ways those sounds are spelled. It is also important for adults teaching phonics to understand how to pronounce each phoneme correctly. Many people will add an sound, which we also call a schwa sound, when saying sounds, like t or m. When we go to sound out words like mat, children find themselves saying m, a, t. Instead, focus on pronouncing just the phoneme, such as a, t.
Furthermore, the Sound Partners program is designed to help students who lack essential reading skills, children who do not know the letter sounds or how to blend sounds, or are unable to segment words into syllables. These struggling students are the candidate of the Sound Partners. Before starting the intervention, students are examined via a mastery test to determine the instructional level and appropriate placement. Throughout the program, students are assessed by taking mastery tests. 7 assessments are conducted in kindergarten, and 10 assessments are conducted in early elementary grades.
It's important to be able to identify any warning signs that might indicate literacy problems that require close monitoring and prompt intervention to prevent reading difficulties. Research has shown that the early identification of reading difficulties alongside early reading intervention will lead to a greater positive outcome for the individual. Learning to read is a complex process. It takes time and systematic explicit literacy instruction. These are some warning signs of potential literacy difficulties that teachers and families can be aware of. Sound Partners identifies children needing targeted intervention using 3 tools: a universal screener such as DIBELS, teacher recommendation from their own assessments, and district testing such as an early literacy screening tool or other formalized tools used by a school district or board. DIBELS stands for Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. DIBELS assesses the 5 foundations of literacy skills as reported by the National Reading Panel: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary. An adult working one-on-one with a child goes through a series of literacy skills questions, such as letter identification, oral reading fluency, or perhaps segmenting sounds, isolating sounds, blending sounds, deleting sounds, etc., to determine if there are any learning gaps. If it has been identified that the child has early reading skills deficits, they can be put forward to receive the reading intervention Sound Partners.
The program is designed to be implemented by paraeducators, instructional assistants, and homeschooling parents. A 4-hour training session is provided by local trainers or remotely via recorded training sessions available on Vimeo. Training and the majority of the material costs are included in the total price of the program. The material included the tutor handbook, the lesson book, and the sound cards. Note that both books, decodable readers, must be purchased separately at the price of 185 Canadian dollars. Also, it is important to highlight that the required material differs based on the program level. The price, regardless of the level, is 113 Canadian dollars, and you can also purchase all 3 master programs together for a price of 311 Canadian dollars.
Before we show you a demonstration of a Sound Partners lesson, let's take a moment to recognize how one feels if they struggle with reading. Please read the following signs. Were you able to read each of those signs? These are signs in various languages warning you not to trespass or that you are on private property. Important pieces of information. What was it like to struggle to decode this information? Frustrating? Disappointing? Hopeless? Now that you can empathize with students with reading difficulties, let's look at how Sound Partners structures a lesson. The Sound Partners program supports the development of reading by teaching phonological skills through a series of lessons. In each lesson, a trained tutor works with individual students. Lessons begin with a specific review of letter sounds. The tutor points to letters, asking students to say the sounds, ensuring students say the sound correctly. The next part of the lesson involves reading of words. The tutor shows the students a list of words and asks questions such as, what sound does this word start with? This word is. What is the middle sound in this word? Each lesson supports the tutor by listing questions to ask the student on the right-hand side of the page. These questions aid in the development of phonemic awareness, decoding, word identification, and spelling skills. Lessons end with sight words and a short paragraph for students to practice word reading skills through storybook reading. The tutor should move through the lesson at a brisk pace with smooth transitions. The tutor should also remain positive and provide specific praise. Let's take a moment to watch a Sound Partners lesson in action.
Alexi, can you point to each letter and say the sound?
T, B, A, F, W, D, N, E, A, E, J, A.
Alexi, write the letter that makes a sound mm. Write the letter that makes a sound t. Write the letter that makes a sound f. Write the letter that makes a sound eh. Write the letter that makes a sound ah. Alexi, break these words into 3 parts. Pot.
Pot.
Cap.
K, A,
Ben.
B, E,
Hot.
H, Ot,
Wet.
W, Et.
Thank you, Julie and Alexi, for that demonstration. Each lesson identifies a particular supplementary book from the series Bob's Books for students to read, reinforcing their newly gained skills. Students are assessed using a mastery test in order to know which lesson to begin with or when to move on to the next levels. Students work through lessons achieving 95 to 100% before moving on to the next set of lessons. Each complete lesson will require 15 to 30 minutes depending on the student.
When searching for an evidence-based intervention, it's important to analyze the research, and the What Works Clearinghouse is a great place to start. So, managed by the U.S. Department of Education, the WWC consists of groups of reviewers who have been trained and certified to review studies and evidence in order to determine their eligibility to meet WWC standards. Study reviews and intervention reports are available on the whatworks.ed.gov website, allowing teachers like us to make informed decisions when searching for evidence-based educational interventions. 3 tools allowed us to effectively evaluate Sound Partners research. Firstly, the WWC rating process flowchart as shown here. Please note that the very first item in this flowchart refers to the randomization of study participants. Secondly, we use the evaluation grid provided by Duff and Clark. And finally, the hierarchy of evidence. Again, it's important to note that all 3 resources make reference to randomized controlled studies, which are considered, as Duff and Clark state, the gold standard in intervention research. While evaluating Sound Partners research, we looked at 7 different studies reviewed and rated by the WWC. It is noted that 4 of these studies met WWC standards, while 3 met standards with reservations. Here are our main findings. In a 1997 trial, Vadasi and colleagues studied a group of 40 grade 1 students receiving Sound Partners tutoring. The study showed that the treatment group outperformed the control group. However, effect sizes were small. Researchers attribute the smaller effect sizes to a lack of implementation fidelity. highlighting the need for a more consistent and effective training program and monitoring of program tutors. In 2003, Mooney studied 47 at-risk grade 1 students, comparing pre- and post-test measures between a randomly assigned experimental group and a comparison group. The results of the study showed a positive and significant impact of the Sound Partners intervention on decoding and reading fluency measures and on overall reading development. One limitation of this study, however, is the lack of longitudinal data to measure the long-term effects of the intervention. 2 additional randomized controlled trials were conducted by Vadasi and colleagues, this time on kindergarten students. The 2008 study by Vadasi and Sanders aimed at replicating previous research results and at comparing individual to dyad tutoring had the following observations. Tutored students once again scored higher than non-tutored students, and interestingly, no significant differences were noted between groups receiving individual or paired tutoring. A 2006 study by Vadasi, Sanders, and Payton demonstrated once again the positive impact of Sound Partners on kindergarten students. Treatment students selected from the bottom 13th percentile in reading in December rose to the 45th percentile by June, following the intervention. One limitation of this study is that it aimed at measuring long-term effects of the program on students. However, significant student attrition between kindergarten and grade 1 negated the effects of that study. As previously noted, 3 studies met WWC standards with reservations, and this was due to either a lack of randomization or high levels of attrition. The first of these studies is the Jenkins and colleagues study, a non-randomized trial that showed limited generalization due to the use of specific texts and even differences in terminology, such as the definition of decodability. The Jenkins and Poole study showed overall positive outcomes of the intervention once again. However, it too was a non-randomized study, given that the grade 1 participants were selected by teachers from 4 schools within the same school district. Finally, although the 2005 study by Vadasi, Sanders, and Payton demonstrated some limitations, given that the recording of important data was lacking, for example, such as the intensity of word study, overall, it appears that once again, the data suggests that this program, Sound Partners, can be highly effective with adequate intervention fidelity.
The timeline for growth with Sound Partners is 18 weeks with daily lessons. According to Friday's email, Sound Partners is research based on 10 years of government grants in the United States. The Florida Center of Reading Research shows strong improvement of reading, with students increasing from the 10th percentile to the 50th percentile after 16 weeks of intervention. ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act, reports that Sound Partners meets strong criteria. With all the programs available, it is important to weigh the pros and cons. We judge this program based on research, practicality, and functionality. In accordance to Read Naturally 2021 and other resources, we learned there are 5 essential components of reading: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Sound Partners Lessons includes intervention in these areas. It has explicit instruction in phonemic awareness, a systematic scope and sequence for phonics instruction, and decodable books that provide fluency, vocabulary, and general comprehension support. In addition to the sound cards Rhonda spoke about, a pro to Sound Partners is the letter sound charts. This connects back to the 44 phonemes in a visual way to support reading. Individual letter sound charts help students track progress and see the bigger picture of what they have to learn. The sound chart supports beginning readers, English language learners, and special ed students. Another pro is the adaptability of the ages targeted with this program. It can support kindergarten to grade 2 students universally and up to grade 3 students with targeted or specialized interventions. It is designed for individual support, but it can be used for up to 4 students. Since teacher time and resources are limited, it is a pro that Sound Partners can be implemented by paraprofessionals or educational assistants. Training is easy to access and follow. The lessons are scripted with detailed description, making the lessons consistent and efficient. Another pro is the mastery tests. They are administered every 10 lessons to track progress. Clear data provided by the tests informs the practice, identifies bigger problems, and keeps learning moving forward. A pro is having colored professional resources like the Bob books and comprehensive manuals to keep lessons interesting. These skills are progressive, so students are learning the essential reading skills they need to be successful. Another attractive feature of this program is the low cost. As school budgets get tighter and reading needs increase, there needs to be cost-effective resources to help teachers. This program itself is affordable for the schools, parents, or even bought by individual teachers. It can be reused year to year. The last pro to this program is the high praise and positive reinforcement students receive. The program is meant to be super supportive, encouraging, and provide beneficial feedback. All programs have their cons. A big con we have for Sound Partners is the amount of teacher FTE needed to manage the program. Many schools have cut or reduced support staff and resource teachers due to budget constraints. Sound Partners need someone to oversee the program of the whole school to see the big picture. Someone must be responsible for training and monitoring the tutors for effectiveness. There needs to be someone to monitor the rigor of the tutors to ensure the fidelity of the lessons. Someone will need to supervise who needs the program, the progress of the students, and track all the data. There will be many people involved. The cost to student ratio is high since it's a 1-to-1 program or can be run 1 to 4 person program. The time to complete the mastery tests is also a con. It is recommended tests be performed by someone other than the regular tutor. The tests are not lengthy, but the transition time and organization of the testing adds a lot to the management of the program. There would also be the marking and reporting time to consider. Along with less adults hired, staff has many demands already placed on them. Even though the program aims to be encouraging, having to master 95% to 100% on the test could be a con and defeating for those who are moving at a slower pace. Having this be a pull-out program where students leave the class and are not with their own teacher is a con. Marzano, 2004, talks about the teacher being the number one factor for student success. Being pulled from the class is also ineffective as time is wasted in transition and scheduling. Students will miss out on other subjects and curriculum in the school and maybe fall behind in those areas. Our last con with Sound Partners is it's only offered in English. In the diverse culture of Alberta and school immersion programs being offered in the province, teachers are looking for resources in other languages. When it comes to measuring the difficulty of effectiveness for Sound Partners, there needs to be progressive monitoring. A supervisor need to know the needs of the students and their reading levels, and someone in charge of the management of the program as a whole. Tests need to be implemented every 10 lessons. And what do we do if a student is not progressing?
Let's go back to imagining you are preparing for your first year of teaching grade 1. You recognize that not all students who will join your class this year will have the same sets of abilities, strengths, or weaknesses, especially when it comes to reading. You want to be prepared and have an intervention that is evidence-based that can help target reading difficulties early. After analyzing research conducted on the program Sound Partners and weighing out the pros and cons of the intervention, our group would recommend Sound Partners to you.